Hi everybody, it's Tri-City Sports Now. I'm Marky Billson. Talked a little bit at the start of the show about the passing of Dick Enberg. I'll get to that. He talks about where Oh My is from and such. And again, Marky's monologue, and you can read about it on Medium or certainly on the 1420 NBC Sports Radio Tri-Cities Facebook page. If you missed our interviews with Ken Pomeroy or Dave Finoli, please, Dave Finoli writing about the incident 71 years ago yesterday in which the Tennessee Volunteers actually refused to play Chuck Cooper, who was the first African-American ever drafted in the NBA. We've come a long way since then, folks. I always say, because I know there's a tendency around here try to cover stuff like that up, and I just don't. You're never going to cover it up, first of all. So you might as well look at it, consider, get reasonably horrified, and then talk about how far you've come. I think Tennessee was the second team in the SEC, second football team to integrate. ETSU integrated, I want to say 63 with John Rushaw. That was his play. And his daughter played at David Crockett. And I know Rushaw. I liked, he actually had a tryout a little bit with the some look-sees with the Browns and the Cowboys, I think. But he told me he had an injury, a cracked jaw, and therefore was not able to play. But let's see here. Wanted to point out a couple of quick notes here on what's going on. Just like I said, the ETSU Buccaneers, they got that game with Georgia Southern, a real, who's stronger, Sun Belt, SoCon. Could, after the victory against Wofford, the SoCon get two bids this year in the NCAAs? I think it's on the table. I look at it this way. Although there are more bad losses than what College of Charleston had in 1999, College of Charleston got an 8 seed in the NCAAs, and they beat North Carolina that year. I talked about this yesterday. North Carolina at the time was ranked number 3. This year they were ranked number 5. Big deal, But, and Wofford doing something that, hey, it's your turn now, Clemson. Winning a game in Chapel Hill, you're a little overdue for that, But regardless, I would point out, though, that looking at this, ETSU's women, who are only 6-7, but they played a real tough schedule. Tennessee, Michigan State, who they lost to. They got a kind of an easy opponent. It's Northern Kentucky, who is 1-9. Tiana Tartar averaging 17 points a game this year. Why in the world is ETSU playing Northern Kentucky? It's not the Atlantic Sundays anymore. They're in the Horizon. ETSU is in the SoCon. Why are they playing this all the time? This isn't like, Georgia Tech or, but I must say, that Penn State should play every year, every time. Clemson and South Carolina, they're in different conferences now. South Carolina, years ago, ACC, hey, they still keep those rivalries alive. You know what? But why is Northern Kentucky and ETSU, which only played in the same league for 2 years, now playing out of conference so much? Well, Kentucky is a border state. It's not Southern Kentucky, it's Northern Kentucky. Well, the Reds have always been popular around here, Tri-City Sports Now. There are 5 teams. By the way, if you're wondering, let's change it, talk to pro football a little bit. And 2 big things. First of all, a lot of big games in this week. One of which, and we're the home of the Dallas Cowboys in the Tri-Cities, 1420 NBC Sports Radio Tri-Cities. The loser of the Cowboys-Seahawks game will not make the playoffs. That's official. The loser of the Cowboys-Seahawks game is out. What happens if they tie? Nobody ties in those scenarios. Come on. Figure it out yourself. But the loser goes from, I think, they're a game back of the Falcons with the tiebreaker out. So let's just say, okay, you want to play this game? All right. If the Cowboys tie, so then they'd have an 8-6-1 record. And theoretically, the Falcons could go 9-7, so I guess the Cowboys could finish ahead with that. But Seahawks would have to lose their last game or something. And, yeah, regardless. These teams will all not make the playoffs if they lose. The Los Angeles Chargers, who I really don't want to see make the playoffs. No, you move, you become a very unlikable team to me. The Detroit Lions, I have forgiven them for moving from Portsmouth, Ohio in 1934. But they're out if they lose. The aforementioned Cowboys and Seahawks. And the Raiders. I don't think anybody ever liked the Raiders. Even when they were losing, and you might want to feel sympathetic, you were like, it's the Raiders. No, we're happy they lose. Unless you were a Raiders fan, in which case, I don't know. I'm glad that Tri-City Sports now is getting into prison. But there is one team. You remember during the offseason, I was talking a lot about the New Orleans Saints. And I really liked the Saints' chances this year because I saw it as one last chance for Drew Brees. If Drew Brees plays next year in his contract, he does have another year on his contract, he will break Peyton Manning's all-time record for yards, and for whatever that's worth. But you get the idea the Saints are going for one last run. That's why they initially signed Adrian Peterson. He didn't work out. Alvin Kamara, Mark Ingram, much better backs, younger, not whiners, this sort of thing. But also, look who's blocking for him and doing a good job is John Kuhn. For so many years, an all-pro fullback. And how many teams still use the fullback? But the all-pro fullback with the Packers now finishing up with the Saints, hoping for one last bit of glory. And, it's a younger defense, but there is a problem with the Saints defense, and they've lost a couple of players. The Steelers' chances of winning the Super Bowl, they have gone down, although Joe Howard may be coming back and replacing Cody Sensabaugh from Kingsport very shortly. But Sensabaugh had an interesting game against Tennessee, the Titans, where he had a big pick, but he also allowed a long touchdown pass. And I think that's kind of, Sensabaugh has been something of a journeyman in his career, and playing with two teams last year, and this is his fourth team in 3 years with the Steelers. So, as a nickelback, but do you want, he's a guy I think that teams think that they can pick on, to be brutally honest with you. But then the Steelers getting Howard back, but they got, obviously, Ryan Shazier is out. So, how does that impact their defense? So far, it's been impacting it a lot. Saints are kind of the same way, and remember last year, the Saints just couldn't stop anybody. That's why they went 7-9. Well, take a look at this. A month ago, they lost defensive end Alex Okafor, and that's hurt the Saints' pass rush. The Saints have been able to beat the mediocre teams, but the losses they've had, Rams, Falcons, Patriots, they've lost to the tough teams, which doesn't bode well for them going into the playoffs. So Okafor, that's hurt their pass rush. But now, middle linebacker A.J. Klein, who's their captain, he calls the signals, looks like he is going to have to go under the knife for a recent groin injury. So without those two players, 10-4, I still like the Saints' chances of making the playoffs, don't get me wrong. But you're talking about some pretty key players to try to make up for. Now, the interesting thing here is who is replacing Klein? And that's Manti Te'o. Remember? Notre Dame? Fake girlfriend? Yes, whatever happened to... Gonna play for the Saints. Gonna start for the Saints. You scratch your chin a little bit and you say, you can have worse backups because as crazy as that story was, Te'o was a pretty good football player. 10 tackles, including 2 for losses in the loss to Atlanta. Who would have thought that Manti Te'o would have been such a big factor in the NFL season this year? Again, I did think I thought the Saints would be about where they are right now. I said, one last run, probably won't make it, but, a lot of veterans and having that year where you make the wild card or win the division with a non-bye record, and then you go and, maybe win one playoff game or make a quick exit or something like, one of those teams, good team, but not great. I thought they were trying to load up with, trying to come back from a 7-9. I don't know. It looks like that's what they're going to do, but Manti Te'o, that's just, that's kind of interesting at what they're looking at doing there. Tri-City Sports Now, I am Marky Billson. We will be on Christmas. No slacking here for the Lord O'Marky. All right? No slacking here. Question is, and I believe that I will have on Steve Forbes, ETSU coach, who we usually have on Mondays. I believe he will be on Tuesday. And it can break down Georgia Southern and maybe a look towards the future of ETSU, not only in this season but beyond. Because like I said, this game tonight, Sunbelt versus SoCon, I'm very intrigued by that. All right, Marky, you're intrigued by what the middle-of-the-road conference is going to be. And we're not talking a Big Ten versus the ACC here. We're talking about the... I mean, we live in Johnson City. That's the difference here. Anyway, beginning of the show, and you can read my piece on Medium, or you can listen on 1420 NBC Sports Radio Tri-Cities to my commentary on Dick Enberg. And when I talk about Dick Enberg is that, of the top network guys, I mean, Enberg was the voice of NBC Sports for the 80s and the 90s. And he had the catchphrase, "Oh my." And when you're at that level, this is not a local baseball announcer with a home run call. As I said before, a Jim Nantz and Al Michaels, these guys, Joe Buck, they don't have catchphrases like an "oh my." Maybe it's the sign of the product of the times with Enberg coming from a previous generation that he did, but somehow, even in that generation, he could use the catchphrase of "oh my" and never come out as anything less than unprofessional, unlike, let's say, John Sterling. Where did "oh my" come from?
Oh my! Touchdown!
Actually, it was a phrase that his mother came up with, and they would say around the house, and it kind of so he stole from his mom. There you go. Anyway, the other thing about Dick Enberg is, let's take a listen to this call.
I would like to hope that people feel I didn't interfere with the game, that the game...
Tri-City Sports Now, so not interfering. And I got to say that I think that was somewhat the case. Oh my enhanced a great catch, and it always seemed he was calling John Elway and saying "oh my" for Elway, and that always used to, as the Marino fan, kind of get a little under my craw. But the one thing that I do remember was how unique that NFL broadcast was of Enberg and Merlin Olsen, almost always taking place out on the West Coast. So you'd get the Chargers and the Raiders or the Broncos a lot. But the other thing that I always remember with that is you think about how the booth is usually constructed. It is the play-by-play guy who is supposed to be a little, somewhat low-key, down-to-earth, don't interfere with the game, let us know it's 1st and 10, that sort of thing. The color commentator, meanwhile, he's the guy that may inject personality. I don't know if Tony Romo really injects, personality in terms of a sense of humor or something like that, but certainly great with analytics and really an understanding of the game. Chris Collinsworth, not afraid to make a critical comment. Got a little bit of that Florida cool to him. There's that personality with him. John Madden certainly is an everyman, a palooka even, if you will. Certainly Howard Cosell and Don Meredith in the old days had, exuded personality. But think about this in that old NBC crew. When it was Enberg and Merlin Olsen, it's kind of driving me a little nuts because it was Enberg who had the personality, who had that enthusiasm. It was Olsen who was always analytical, down to earth, low key, very low key. Never speaking unless he really had something to say. Talk about how Enberg was the voice of NBC Sports in that era. I remember Merlin Olsen may have been the voice of all of NBC because you saw him on Sundays on the NFL Game of the Week or the AFC Game of the Week all the time. And then during the week, you'd see him on, I don't know, Father Murphy or something like that, you know. But he was getting the job done and then you'd see him on the ads with FTD Flores. Of course, then again, Dick Enberg did his share of advertisements as well. So, let's see, usually it seems like communications companies did a lot of ads for them. Anyway, Dick Enberg, I'm sure you've heard the news, passing away at 82, a sportscasting icon. And also, you know, I felt very unique. He was in that he was the play-by-play guy, but he was the person that put the enthusiasm for the game during his broadcasts and let the color commentator be the low-key guy and the just the facts guy. That's unique. I don't know that we don't see that very often. Tri-City Sports Now, when we come back, I am going to tell you there is a major injury for the Georgia Bulldogs, a major departure that could influence their game against the Oklahoma Sooners and Baker Mayfield and determine who's going to win the national championship. Tell you all about that when we come back. Tri-City Sports Now.
Hearing loss or muffled or blurred.